a $500 meal, a free act of cruelty, and a guest no one recognized until it was too late. They thought he was a nobody. They splashed him, mocked him, filmed him like a joke. But when Heston Blumenthal walked out into the rain, everything changed. Because the man they humiliated was Keanu Reeves, and the table he never took, it forced an entire industry to look in the mirror. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching this from? We love seeing how far these stories travel. The rain had a soft rhythm that evening in Bray, tapping politely on cobblestone, as if asking permission to fall. Street lamps glowed like low-hung moons, casting long shadows across the quiet village. Outside the world-famous Fat Duck restaurant, where tables were booked months in advance and every course was theater, a man stood alone beneath the curved wooden awning. He was soaked. His boots were weathered, jeans damp at the cuffs, and the collar of his charcoal gray coat clung to his neck. A small satchel hung at his side, faded canvas, fraying at the edges. His beard was light, rough around the chin. His hair was pulled back beneath a dark wool cap. Most didn't recognize him. In a place where perfume cost more than rent and time was measured in tasting menus, he was invisible. But not to Vivica Rowan. From the moment she noticed him on the corner security feed, standing still, not scrolling, not smoking, she was uneasy. The general manager of the Fat Duck didn't like anomalies. She liked control, curated experience, seamlessness. And this man, this stranger standing on her threshold, was a wrinkle in silk. She stepped outside. Vivica was composed, as always. Tailored black dress, collar sharp, makeup matte and bloodless. Her platinum hair was slicked into a bun so tight it looked sculpted. The only hint of flair, a crimson pin on her lapel shaped like a molecular spiral, an homage to the restaurant's scientific flair. The man looked up, didn't speak. Vivica smiled without warmth. "I'm sorry, sir," she said crisply. "This space is reserved for arriving guests." He blinked. "I'm not blocking anyone. It's also reserved for a certain standard of presentation." Her words hung longer than necessary. She looked him up and down, slowly, deliberately. He simply nodded. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said softly. "No, I'm sure," she replied. "Still, I must ask you to move along. The entrance needs to remain elegant." A couple passed by behind her, one of them whispering, "Isn't that—" Vivica cut in quickly, shielding the man with her posture. She smiled wider, faker. "Some people really will do anything to get noticed these days." She turned, walked back inside. The man stayed. He moved a little farther to the side, under the edge of the awning. His boots left faint wet marks on the flagstone. He watched the warm interior through the glass. Golden light, delicate laughter, plates like miniature sculptures. He didn't reach for his phone. He didn't call anyone. He just stood. Inside, Vivica signaled discreetly to the host. "Call someone. I want him gone before the next table arrives." No one asked for his name. No one asked why he was there. But outside, Just past the glass, Keanu Reeves closed his eyes, took a breath, and waited. The rain didn't stop. It simply grew thinner, more persistent. The kind that clings to fabric and settles in the bones. Keanu remained motionless outside the fat duck, standing just under the lip of the awning. Though the awning kept the worst of the drizzle off his face, the cold seeped into his jacket and down his sleeves. Still, he waited. Inside, the lighting was gentle and warm, like sunlight remembered rather than felt. Each table shimmered under bespoke fixtures, and the dining room buzzed with controlled laughter and hushed anticipation. Plates drifted past like art installations. Mushroom jellies, snail porridge, edible paper soaked in memory. Vivica Rowan watched the doorway with hawk-like precision. Her lips were curled into the kind of smile that hurt to maintain, but she refused to let it drop. The presence outside gnawed at her nerves, not because he was dangerous, but because he didn't belong. And in Vivica's world, that was enough. She leaned toward a junior staff member polishing glassware. "James," she said, voice velvet-wrapped steel. "The entrance is streaked with mud. We can't have that." James looked at her, puzzled. "You mean outside?" She nodded toward the door. "I want the pavement washed down, thoroughly." He hesitated, glancing toward the man still standing silently in the corner of the doorway. "But it's raining, Vivica." "Exactly. That's why no one will question it." Outside, Keanu shifted his stance. His knees ached a little. Nothing dramatic, just the creak of time. He watched a group of influencers pose near a sculpture installation just beyond the gate. One of them caught his eye and scoffed. "Bro looks like he wandered off a train station bench," the girl whispered to her friend. "This restaurant really needs a velvet rope." Moments later, the door opened behind him. James stepped out, awkwardly carrying a galvanized steel bucket and a mop handle. He gave Keanu an apologetic look, then, at Vivica's pointed stare from behind the glass, tilted the bucket. Water hit the stone. It splashed wide, soaking Keanu's boots and darkening the hem of his coat. Some of it caught his jeans, cold against the skin. He didn't flinch. "Sorry," James muttered. Keanu simply nodded. From inside, Vivica tilted her head, evaluating the scene like a gallery curator judging balance and tone. A few diners noticed the moment. One young man lifted his phone discreetly, filming through the rain-speckled window. Vivica stepped forward again, pushing open the door. "I believe I was clear earlier, Mr. whoever you are. We cannot allow guests to be made uncomfortable. Please, for everyone's sake, leave." He looked at her. Really looked this time. Not with anger, not even with sadness. Just quiet disappointment. Then he stepped back, out from under the awning, and into the full rain. Behind him, the golden light of the fat duck flickered across the wet pavement. Vivica exhaled, triumphant. But somewhere across the internet, a single clip was uploaded. And it would soon begin. They washed him away like garbage. They didn't know he was Keanu Reeves. Inside the fat duck, the rain was merely ambiance, a suggestion heard faintly through triple glazed windows, like a sound effect added for aesthetic. Guests sipped cocktails infused with vapor and nostalgia. Waiters glided across the polished floor, balancing plates like they carried secrets. At table 7, a financier from Dubai adjusted his cufflinks and leaned toward his wife. "Darling, did you see that?" he whispered. "That man outside. Looks like he crawled out of a sewer." His wife, glittering in emeralds, barely looked up from her foie gras parfait. "I thought this place was exclusive," she murmured. "Now it's just bleeding into the street." They chuckled. Just beyond their table, a group of TikTok influencers filmed themselves opening a glass cloche that released edible fog. One of them scrolled his phone mid-bite and smirked. "Yo, that old dude outside? Someone's already posted it. Homeless man loiters at the Fat Duck. 2,000 likes in 15 minutes. He turned the screen to the others. Vivica Rowan walked past their table just in time to hear it. Perfect. Let them talk. Let them film. Every viral moment built her brand, reinforced the aura she'd cultivated so ruthlessly. The Fat Duck as performance, as elite theater. And she was the director, the gatekeeper. She stepped into the lobby again, eyes narrowing through the curved glass panels of the entrance. Keanu was still there, now standing in the rain proper, his coat hanging heavier by the second, shoulders soaked. He stood like a statue that didn't care to be admired. Not defiant, just constant. Vivica clenched her jaw. This wasn't an act of rebellion. He wasn't yelling, protesting, begging for entry. He wasn't doing anything at all. And somehow that was worse. She turned to the maitre d'. "I want him moved, off the premises, off the property." The maitre d' hesitated. "He's not on the property. Technically, he's on public. Then create a problem. Do we need to call the council? Has sanitation cite him? Anything. He doesn't belong here." The maitre d' nodded stiffly. A few feet away, one of the younger servers, Sasha, stood frozen behind the bar. She'd just caught a clearer glimpse of the man through the glass. Her breath hitched. She whispered to her colleague, "That guy, doesn't he look like—" "No way. Keanu Reeves? Standing in the rain like that?" "Exactly," Sasha said. "No one would ever think it was him. That's why it might be." The colleague shrugged. "If it is, someone's getting fired." Meanwhile, Vivica walked briskly back into the dining room. Her smile was dazzling again, professionally practiced. "The chef's next course," she announced, "will be our signature duck à l'orange. Inspired, of course, by the original from Tour d'Argent, but molecularly deconstructed." Polite applause followed. Outside, in the rain, a single droplet rolled from Keanu's brow, and for the first time since arriving, he smiled. But it wasn't for anyone inside. The rain had slowed, but the tension inside the Fat Duck had not. Vivica paced near the host station, one eye on the glass, the other on her phone. The video of Keanu, still being labeled as the drifter or the protester, had now crossed 300,000 views. She should have been pleased. Exposure was everything. But something about the way he just stood there, calm, unmoved, was beginning to unnerve her. She hated what couldn't be labeled. Behind her, the servers prepared for the final course. A hush fell over the kitchen like a ritual. The Botrytis cinerea, a dish inspired by noble rot, was being plated with tweezers and breathless precision. And then the silence was broken. The side door opened with a groan that hadn't been heard in months. A gust of damp air swept through the rear corridor, bringing with it something colder than rain. White clogs tapped on polished tile. All eyes turned. There, stepping in from the garden path, soaked at the shoulders but unmistakable in his double-breasted chef's jacket, stood Heston Blumenthal. His glasses fogged slightly. His face was unreadable. His presence was immediate. The head sous chef nearly dropped a pipette. No one had expected him tonight. He hadn't told anyone he was coming. Vivica turned at the sound of clogs, her practiced expression faltering for just a heartbeat. "Heston," she said, recovering. "I didn't know you were—" He didn't respond. He walked past her, through the dining room, his steps slow but deliberate. Guests whispered, pulling out phones. Someone clapped in confusion, mistaking this for a planned celebrity moment. Vivica followed closely behind, nervously smoothing her lapel. "Heston," she tried again, "if this is about the man outside, I assure you—" He stopped walking. She nearly collided into him. Heston turned slowly, his eyes piercing through the fog of pretense that clung to the dining room like smoke from dry ice. He didn't speak to her. He spoke to the room. "There is a man standing in the rain outside this restaurant. He has said nothing. He has harmed no one. And yet some of you laughed at him. Some filmed him. Some asked him to leave, not for what he did, but for what he looked like." The room stilled. Forks froze halfway to their mouths. Glasses hovered mid-air. Vivica's face paled, but she forced a smile. "With respect, Heston, he was disrupting the environment. We have standards. Hospitality," he said, "was the first standard." That shut her up. He turned toward the window where Keanu still stood beneath the soft drizzle. And then, without another word, Heston walked outside. The door closed behind him with a softness that felt like thunder. Vivica stood motionless, as if rooted to the floor. Every guest now stared at her, some whispering. Others are recording. For the first time all evening, she could not control the room. And just beyond the glass, in the gray light of the English rain, two men stood together. One known to the world, the other about to be. "Are you still here? If you are, drop a comment below and say yes. Let's see who's with us till the end." The rain came down softer now, like it was listening. Keanu stood still under the gray sky, water sliding down his coat like silence over stone. But beside him now stood Heston Blumenthal, drenched at the shoulders, pristine in purpose. The chef said nothing at first. He just stood there, as if the act of being with him, outside, was statement enough. Inside the fat duck, the diners pressed against the glass. Some held phones, some held their breath. Vivica watched too, her eyes narrow, calculating. But her usual certainty felt brittle. The room was shifting, and not in her favor. Finally, Heston spoke. "Thank you for waiting," he said softly. Keanu turned to him, smile faint. "You didn't keep me waiting." "They did. That landed heavier than any accusation. Heston nodded once, then turned toward the door. He opened it, not like a maitre d', not like a performer, but like a man opening his own home. He gestured silently for Keanu to enter. Keanu stepped forward, and as he did, the air inside shifted. A quiet ripple passed through the guests like guilt made visible. Some dropped their phones. Some raised their glasses. Vivica stepped forward fast, her voice a little too high. Heston, with all due respect, he didn't have a reservation. Heston looked at her. No fury, no flare. Just calm ice. He doesn't need a reservation. He built the table. Murmurs spread. Wait, what does he mean? Built the table? Heston stepped into the center of the room, rain still trailing from his sleeves. Keanu stood behind him, quiet as ever. And then, with the same composure he brought to plating, Heston dropped the truth. 2 years ago, during the pandemic, this restaurant was weeks from closure. Every investor backed out. Michelin support? Gone. But one man, one name, sent us help. No press, no signature, just one condition: never tell anyone who it was. He turned, hand gesturing toward Keanu. Until now. Gasps. Audible. Keanu's name spilled from mouths that had ridiculed him minutes before. Vivica's lips parted, but no sound came out. Heston continued. The man you all mocked, filmed, called garbage. He kept this place alive. He funded the kitchen scholarships, paid the junior chefs' salaries, helped us reopen under the promise that we would serve everyone with dignity, no matter their clothes, no matter their cameras, no matter their status. He looked at Vivica. And tonight, you failed that promise. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The room was watching. And Keanu? He said nothing. He didn't have to. Truth didn't need volume. It just needed timing. And this moment was his. Heston stepped aside. Mr. Reeves, your table is ready. But Keanu didn't move forward. Instead, he looked around, at the faces that had laughed, the hands that had filmed. Then he looked at Heston. Let someone else take it. I didn't come to eat. I came to see who was hungry for decency. And the room, so full of taste, suddenly tasted bitter. The silence that followed Keanu's words was suffocating. Nobody touched their wine. The sound of a single fork clattering to the floor felt like thunder. Then someone's phone pinged. Then another, and another. The air changed. Not because of Keanu's refusal, not even because of Heston's revelation, but because the outside world had entered the dining room, one notification at a time. On Sasha's phone, the clip from earlier, Keanu getting splashed with mop water, Vivica's words laced with contempt, was everywhere. 4.2 million views. The caption, Fat Duck Manager Humiliates Unknown Man. Then Heston Blumenthal walks out into the rain. Twitter was ablaze. Reddit threads titled, The Industry's Dirty Little Secret, and When Kindness Gets You Kicked Out. On TikTok, the soundbite of Vivica sneering, He's disrupting the environment, was already being remixed under tags like Fine Dining Gate, Keanu was right, and Michelin shame. Vivica's phone buzzed again. She didn't check it. She couldn't. Her hands shook too much. Some guests looked at her. Others deliberately looked away. Then the maitre d', stiff with guilt, whispered, "Vivica, the press is outside." "What?" "There's a camera crew from ITV, and Sky News is on the way." Vivica turned to Heston. "You're letting this become a spectacle." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Keanu had stepped aside, out of the spotlight, back to the shadows by the window. But it was too late for shadows. The room had already been illuminated. Across the globe, chefs began reposting the video with their own messages. Dominique Crenn: "Hospitality means nothing without humanity." Massimo Bottura: "A dish without dignity is just decoration." Jose Andres: "I'd serve Keanu even if he walked in naked and barefoot." It wasn't just celebrities. Thousands of young chefs, waiters, and kitchen porters flooded the comments with stories, being judged by their shoes, accents, tattoos, passports. And now they had a symbol. A moment. A man who stood in the rain and didn't raise his voice. A chef who walked out into it with him. A woman who got caught thinking a dining room was more sacred than a person. Vivica tried to speak again, but even her voice sounded outdated. "The restaurant has protocols," she muttered, almost to herself. Sasha, the youngest on staff, stepped forward and said what no one else dared to. "Maybe it's time the restaurant changed." The room inhaled sharply. Vivica's eyes darted toward Heston. She expected defense. Instead, she saw resolve. He placed a hand gently on Sasha's shoulder. Then I turned to the room. "Tonight will not be remembered for a dish. It will be remembered as the night hospitality checked its reflection and didn't like what it saw. And from that reflection, a revolution began. By morning, the storm had shifted from Bray's cobbled streets to the marble offices of the Michelin Guide. In Paris, London, Copenhagen, emails piled up like confessions, videos, petitions, headlines that read more like indictments. When stars become blind. The hospitality industry's humiliation complex. Keanu Reeves and the quiet revolution at the Fat Duck. Heston Blumenthal hadn't given a statement to the press. He didn't need to. The image of him standing beside Keanu in the rain said enough. But he did make a call to an old friend at Michelin's London bureau, a man who once told him, "We rate perfection, not personality." That morning, Heston asked just one question. Is perfection still worth a star if the human being eats, it feels worthless? And for the first time in decades, Michelin hesitated. Meanwhile, the ripple had become a wave. Chefs around the world began to speak up, not just about the Fat Duck, but about fine dining itself, about gatekeeping, the silent judgment, the obsession with exclusivity that left too many people outside, soaking in the rain. Within 48 hours, over 300 chefs signed a joint letter addressed to Michelin, the James Beard Foundation, and the world's 50 best. It was published in The Guardian under the title, "We feed people, not pedestals." And at the bottom of the letter, scribbled in quiet defiance, Keanu Reeves, artist, guest, and believer in kindness at the Fat Duck, the aftermath was quieter, but no less seismic. Vivica Rowan was gone. No press release, no farewell email, just an empty corner office and a folded name tag left on the host's stand. Heston didn't gloat. He didn't have to. The industry had done the sentencing for him. Instead, he called his entire staff together. All of them, dishwashers, line cooks, barbacks, no uniforms, no hierarchy. He spoke to them not as a celebrity chef, but as a man tired of silence. For too long, we've served plates with precision, but forgotten the people we serve them to. We've guarded our doors like vaults and called it refinement. That ends today. From that meeting, a new program was born. The Blind Table. One table in every service. No reservation, no dress code, no fame, no status. Anyone could sit. Everyone would be served. Soon, other restaurants followed. The Ledbury in London, Franzen in Stockholm, Osteria Francescana in Modena. And when Michelin finally released their next guide, a new line appeared beneath select reviews. Hospitality verified, guest first protocol certified. No one said it outright, but everyone knew who started it. Keanu never returned to the Fat Duck. He didn't need to. He wasn't the one who needed the reservation. He was the one who made room for others. Weeks later, on a quiet afternoon in Bray, the rain returned. Not in fury, but with the gentleness of memory. The sky was pale, clouds like stretched parchment. Outside the Fat Duck, where once a man had stood drenched and unwelcome, a single table now sat permanently beneath the awning. Small, uncovered, unadvertised. It wasn't on the reservation system. It had no number. It wasn't offered to celebrities or influencers. It simply existed. And today, it was occupied. Heston Blumenthal sat there alone, a notebook beside him, raindrops landing softly on the edge of the table. His chef's coat was traded for a plain sweater. He looked not like a legend, but like a man still learning how to listen. Across from him sat a boy no older than 16, thin, nervous, clutching the edges of his hoodie. He had never been in a restaurant like this before. And yet, he had been invited. The boy stared at the dish in front of him, what looked like a forest in miniature. Smoked beetroot gel, crisped kale, edible moss, and a single shard of sugar glass. "What's this called?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Heston smiled. "It doesn't have a name yet," he said. "It's yours. You tell me." The boy blinked, then grinned. "Rain candy." Heston nodded. "Perfect." Inside, through the window, Sasha watched from the service station. She was assistant maitre d' now, no longer afraid to speak. She saw them laughing, saw the ease, and felt it again. The shift, the why of it all. At the bar, a woman in pearls asked her, "Who's the guest outside? Some Michelin inspector?" Sasha shook her head. "No, just someone who asked for the table." "Anyone can sit there? Anyone who doesn't need to be seen." Outside, the boy finished the dish, eyes wide. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, looked embarrassed, then stopped when Heston did the same, on purpose. They laughed. "I never thought I'd eat here," the boy admitted. "Places like this, they're not for people like me." Heston's smile faded into something quieter. "They weren't," he said. "But that was our mistake, not yours." The boy looked around. "So, why me?" Heston tapped the table gently. "Because you asked." Down the street, unnoticed by all, Keanu Reeves walked alone with a book tucked under his arm. No entourage. No cameras. He passed the restaurant and paused just long enough to see the table, the laughter, the newness of it all. He smiled. Then he turned the corner and disappeared. Not every hero needs to come back. Some just need to walk far enough ahead to make space for others to sit. And as the rain whispered down, soft as forgiveness, the fat duck kept one table open. For the hungry, for the humble, and for anyone who remembered what hospitality was always meant to taste like. That night, a table under the rain became more than a place to eat. It became a symbol. A reminder that kindness should never depend on appearance, status, or a reservation list. In an industry obsessed with perfection, one silent man and one bold chef reminded the world of something more important. Dignity is the real luxury. And maybe hospitality isn't about flawless plates, but about open doors. So next time you walk past someone who seems out of place, ask yourself, what if they're the reason change begins? Because in the end, the most powerful revolutions don't start with noise. They start with someone who refused to sit until everyone could. Are you still watching? If this story moved you, hit the heart or comment. Everyone deserves a seat below. Let's make space for stories that matter.